Okay, so this is the Mastermind on the 7th of August, I believe. So
Yes.
Sandy had a really rough night last night, so she's gonna try and sleep. I was getting messages from her at like 2, 3, 4, and 6 in the morning. So she's gonna try to get some sleep. I know her shoulder is bothering her. She did do the PRP and it was feeling pretty good there for a little bit. And now she's, having some issues. So she's going to see the surgeon this coming week. So we'll find out if she's going to have surgery or not. Hopefully I have my baby before then, so everything will be maintained and run smoothly. That's kind of my goal. So today she wanted to talk to everyone about what Jeremy had spoken about Monday night, which is the hero's journey, how you see that in your book or maybe in another endeavor that you're wanting to kind of pursue and what it means for you. And so I'm going to let the conversation just kind of run with whoever wants to start it. And if you have questions that I can answer most questions. So if you have questions about something or whatever, then we can kind of detour and do that. But I'm going to let the conversation kind of just run about the hero's journey and stuff. Sorry. Because I learned a lot from it. I also learned my toddler is insane. Anyways, so I learned a lot about it. I haven't written a book, Jeremy, I'm sorry, I haven't, but I can see it when I watch movies and things like that, how they play out for me. That's how I can relate it, is for movies. So I'm interested to hear how everyone else saw it. I'm really interested to hear, Delia, how you saw it, because you wrote a memoir and it does pertain to you. So I'm interested to see kind of what you saw it kind of unfold in your book, the book that you are currently writing. So how did you see Monday for you?
You're asking everybody. I love autobiographies. I like reality. I like to, I've read, even Einstein, I read his biography. I'm interested in relationships. So I'm always interested in how people, as the age that I am, seeing relationships evolve, in families, in men and women, and people in partnerships. How is it that they balance this going for your dream and the other person going for their dream and having relationships? So it's interesting to me how people always, how you figure out relationships. And I tend to keep people, even though I've been married twice and I didn't keep any, those two. And I'm, or they didn't keep me, which it was so, so the whole fantasy I do once in a while, but life is too exciting to get into fantasy. My life has been, I'm minding my own business and all kinds of things happen. So, and I seem to get in the middle. I had a boss, I used to say, why is that? And then he said, wait, of it. Most people duck. You're in the firing line all the time. So I sort of learned how to duck so that it doesn't hit me. But it is, I love the hero's journey. I love the heroine journey. I have a fantasy of doing my fence, doing a whole story. I'm not an artist that can carve things, but I can think of wooden things where I do a whole heroine's journey in there. So there is a heroine's journey for me to market this book. And so that piece that you mentioned, how you market and who's the hero, who's the sage, who is, the different parts, that was very useful to me. I try to think of it that way. So yeah. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to figure out the pieces as, these challenges come in this world that is so unknown to me, the brave new world of marketing a book.
Well, the one thing that I'll say, Delia, is it okay if I talk, Amy?
Yeah, go for it.
The one thing I'll say to that, Delia, is what I said on Monday night. I'm just going to repeat it. Remember that in marketing of any kind, we're the medicine to whatever is ailing them. So there's something that is there's a problem for them, or something missing for them, or something that they need, something that they want, something that they're looking for, something that's ailing them, meaning a real issue that they have, that whatever we have, solves for them. So approach it from that angle of what are the readers of my book? What is their problem that my book is solving?
Mhm.
Because if they're the hero, then because they're always the hero, they're faced with a problem. And so if we're the sage, we're presenting them with the plan and then the knowledge and skills for that problem. So what do I bring to the table that's going to give them what they're looking for?
And you know, my response to that, and I'll let go because I'm, you know, sure other people wanted to participate, is that because I come from the history of hands-on and implementing and, you know, and having results and that kind of mentality, and, you know, and studying something and then implementing and then having a captive audience, you know, because in everything that I've done, there are 3 careers, it's been a captive audience. I'm developing something and there is a captive audience. You know, when you teach, especially if you teach in a university, any kind of classroom, they're coming for what you're offering.
Yes.
So you connecting with them, they need, but it's how is it that you make what they need exciting? How is it that you connect to them? So
Yes.
the world of marketing and, you know, funnels and all kinds of things, I can't get a hold of that audience somehow.
But it's the same. So what I want you to hear is what you just said, Delia, is the exact same thing. The difference is with teaching, they're coming to you
Mhm.
because they know they have the problem. A lot of the times your readers don't even know that they have whatever the problem you're able to define is. So we got to present it to him, that present it to them. That's where marketing and funnels and things like that are concerned, because you're going to give them the problem that they probably don't even know that they have yet. And you're going to state the problem. You know what it feels like when you have XYZ, or have you ever experienced this? And immediately I'm like, yeah, I've experienced that. There's the problem, and now I'm going to give you the solution. That's why I wrote, that's why I created, that's what I chose to. So the difference is in teaching, they're coming to you because they already know their problem. In marketing, you've got to give them their problem because they don't even realize they have it often. Athena, did you have something?
I was going to say, in writing, for readers, there are 3 problems: information, inspiration, and entertainment. Those are the 3 problems that they want solved. Either they want to learn something, be helped inspirationally about something, or they want to be entertained. And those are your problems that you can look at if you meet the needs of the reader in those 3 avenues: inspiration, information, and entertainment.
Yeah,
And to that, Delia,
I would add connection.
Yes, but that's inspiration. That
Yeah.
falls
Okay.
under inspiration.
All
So
right.
so yours is big in inspiration, Delia, I would say.
It is.
So inspiration is the thing that they don't even know maybe that they need. However, you're going to take aspects like you just talked. What are the aspects of inspiration for you? Relationship is part of it. Cultural awareness is part of it. Feeling connected to my history and people is part of it. Telling my own, seeing myself in the story is part of it, right? So inspiration is big for you. So the more problem that you present that way. Have you ever feel, you know, when you're talking about other Puerto Ricans and you say something like, have you ever felt that Puerto Rico is so rich in its culture and history, and that history and culture is not known in the world? Do you know what I mean by? And they go, yes, of course. That's why I wrote this memoir, to really encapsulate our history and culture. Well, I got to read this thing.
And
So you're presenting them the problem, that whether they know it or not. And you're, a big one for you is inspiration. Knowledge is part of it. I would say entertainment, of course, entertainment, because I'm sure you have anecdotes in there, right? You know, things that are funny. But Athena's absolutely right. All of us can find we can apply that everywhere, not just with reading, but with everywhere: inspiration, knowledge, and or entertainment.
Thanks.
Awesome. I love it. That was good. I love it. See, I always learn something, Jeremy, every time.
I mean, you know, I can talk forever because, you know, incredible pool of information, but I always, I want to give other people a chance.
But it applies equally to, so take what Athena said, entertainment, inspiration, and knowledge. This applies to fiction just as much as it does to nonfiction, right? A lot of that is going to be inspiration, but there is going to be knowledge, and massively for fiction is going to be the entertainment factor, right? That's really what a lot of people read fiction for, the escapism of fiction.
I'd like to jump in right quick.
Yeah.
Actually, it's for Amy, because I wasn't able to sit through the whole thing Monday with the, I haven't been able to find it though online. So
Yeah.
if you can just put it in the chat or something.
No, I started posting them Friday after the mastermind, so I post them together. So it's like this week's together. So it'll be posted. I'll have it posted up here at 1 o'clock Monday and today's mastermind group together.
Okay, good, because I was trying to find it so I can actually listen to it. I had so many things going on when you were talking, Jeremy. So I said, well, you know what? I'll watch what I can, and
I'll
then
revisit this.
See the whole thing later.
Yeah, no, everyone should revisit. It was a lot of information, and it was very well presented, Jeremy. I'll just say that it was very well presented, but you're gonna have to go back and re-listen to it.
I know, it is a lot of information.
Yeah,
and that's a short period of time to cram a lot of information in.
Yeah, but it's inspiring. So I mean, if you haven't, really considered the hero's journey and how it plays about, when you listen to Jeremy talk and explain it, and then you go back and you think about your book or you think about a movie or whatever, you totally see it. And so that's what I love. I love when things connect like that for me. It's just like, oh, I need to listen to it again, because it's like always making different connections. So that's why I know Sandy wanted to talk about it today. So it's just kind of an open floor, pretty much.
So fill in the blanks is the
say,
key. If you have the elements, you just fill in the blanks. Yeah.
I'd just like to say that one thing that was really funny for me, and this goes back a couple of years when I first wrote Killer with a Heart, my 4-part killer novel. And I went to go pitch it for movies. And I went out to Hollywood and New York to go pitch it for movies. At first I went to Hollywood, and they listened to it and everything, listened to the pitch. And one of the things they told me was, I had no heroes in my novel. Everybody was a bad guy. I had no redeeming characters. And I was like, well, they're kind of redeeming to each other. Yes, they're all bad guys and horrible people, but they are good to each other. They form this bond between each other. So yes, to the outside world, yes, every one of these people are, they're criminals. They're mafia gang leaders. They're doing horrible things, but together, their journey was to go from being the unknown, low man on the totem pole type of person to rising to the top of the criminal world.
So I'm glad that you mentioned this, James, because this is an important aspect that often gets overlooked, that bad guys, quote unquote, have their own hero's journey. They do. Every villain in every movie and every story and every book has their own hero's journey, whether we realize it or not. The trick is, James, when you are pitching to Hollywood especially, and you've got a book where the villains are the heroes of the journey, and you're not Scorsese, so you can't just go, I'm Scorsese, I know what I'm talking about. I can have villains as the heroes, deal with it. You've got to present their hero stories that they can see and go, oh gosh, these guys, I feel emotionally connected to, which I'm sure that they had hero stories. You just got to plug in those pieces and then have a great log line and go, in this setting, these people faced this problem. They met somebody who had a plan, and they transformed and solved the problem. And we don't think of it when we have villains as the heroes in that, because in our minds we see them as villains. But if we really just change the conversation in their minds, is there's no such thing as villains. There's only heroes' journeys. Period.
Right. Well, in my mind and in my book, they were only villains to the rest of the world. They were
Correct.
they had their own hero journey because they were trying to navigate this world where everybody was bad. So it was like, okay.
Very few villains.
After The Godfather was that.
Correct. Yeah. There you go. I mean, the very few villains are actually diabolic. meaning that there's nothing but intense hatred, evil, and no redemptive quality whatsoever. Most of them have their own hero's journey, whatever that looks like. Most of them fall into the aberrant category where they have some sort of principles that they live by. They just, to the rest of the world, those principles are evil.
Yeah.
But they
Well,
still
see, that's the
are
whole thing.
principled in their mind.
You have principles with your, even if your characters are quote unquote villains, because they're not really villains in the story. It's like, but they do have their own, like you say, basic principles that they stick to, and their own sort of ethos that they carry through. And so, you know, it was just funny when I went to Hollywood and did it. Then when I went to New York, I figured, well, this is the New York story about the New York mob. They'll get it. They'll know. They weren't as hard about it. They were like, oh, okay, but we don't know if we can sell this. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. You'll sell it after it's the bestseller. You'll come back to me.
That's right. That's absolutely accurate.
Yeah, so it was just funny to me that the hero journey idea, and when people think about the hero journey, they always think about it being a good guy in a story. And like, there's quite a few, like you said, Scorsese, what's his name? Who does all the crazy movies, like Pulp Fiction and them.
There's lots of them,
They have the
Tarantino is one.
Yeah,
but Tarantino definitely follows the hero's journey, even though his movies are. You know,
they do.
He definitely does. Scorsese can deviate from. There's people, you know, that can definitely quote unquote deviate from it, but I promise you, if you look at even in the underlying, it's there. I was curious more of where people saw it in their own lives. Were you able to see the hero's journey play out for yourself in whether you were conscious of it or not? Because it's so much a part of our genome that it plays out in a very unconscious way, and we act on it without even realizing that we're acting on it. Or else it wouldn't show up in things like memoirs, because every memoir I've ever read is a hero's journey. And so how come? Because it shows up in the human genome. So I'm curious if you guys were able to observe it in your own lives, where you saw this, whoever you were, and it happens over and over again. So it happens on the little scale all the way to the big overarching tale of our life. But even if have you seen it at a little scale, like here I was, I didn't know, I was in this familiar place, then all of a sudden there was a problem, then there was this guide, and they gave me a plan, and I was able to transform, and then I came back a different person and overcome what I was looking for. I mean, this happens over and over and over again for us. It's already written in our genes, so therefore we just play it out. Well, and then we write stories about it.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about, you know, the hero's journey in books like Red Laughlin, his latest book on longevity. You know, I'm trying to absorb all that information that he has put in there. I wish I read it a long time ago. But he doesn't. There's a hero's journey behind that, because there's a reason why he has really gone through that. I haven't captured it in what I've read so far in that book, but it's, you know, his wife having cancer, he really being so passionate about that. I wonder if, you know, Red would talk a little bit about that, because there's a great hero's journey on the books that he writes, especially that last one.
I could a little bit. I tell people that my first love in life was chemistry, long before I ever met my wife. And I got an invitation to Vietnam, so I couldn't practice it. And when I finally got back from there, I'm in a totally different world. And so after I retired after Halliburton allowed me to retire at their leisure, I started getting involved in self-improvement, motivation. I was going around the country speaking, selling my books and CDs and things. And then my wife came down with breast cancer, and she went through months of chemo, and I could fairly well address most of the side effects, but fatigue was one I could not, no matter what I did, I could not make a dent now. She's taking 1 or 2 2-hour naps a day, and Anyway, so I read this book called The Walls Protocol, and it worked very well for Dr. Terry Walls. It took her out of years in a wheelchair and MS into being a normal functioning person. And we had just got finished interviewing the radiologist, and he said her fatigue was probably going to get worse. So we decided on day one of radiation to adopt the dietary portion only of the Walls Protocol, which is 4 different things. One is toxin removal, exercise, stress relief, and diet. So we put her on that. And what happened in 48 hours, months of chemo and what eventually turned out to be weeks of radiation, evaporated, went away, gone. Within a week of starting radiation, she was volunteering back up at the church again. The last day of radiation, we left Houston at noon, drove to Jacksonville, Florida, about 1,000 miles. I rented a U-Haul, and within 48 hours of her last treatment for radiation, she was driving behind me 500 miles a day by herself while I brought my mom's estate stuff back to Texas. And so from a hero's journey, all I was a researcher, but my wife was the hero in the fact that, you know,
Yes.
she adopted that particular protocol and magically became a human person again, as opposed to somebody who was sleeping in bed and couldn't, you know, be bothered with eating or anything else. It just, fatigue disappeared. And so if something like that works, then why would that not qualify as a hero's journey, I guess?
Absolutely. And I think something interesting in this story, and I'm not diminishing anything in it, Red, by calling it a story, but in this hero's journey that you're talking about, you were in the role of the sage to a degree because you researched and discovered the information from what would be the ultimate sage. So in our stories, sometimes we're like, okay, who's really the sage in this? Don't get wrapped up in that. The person who's directly interacting with the hero, the Nanagan books, those 2 characters seem like these goofy, you know, but they're the ones that actually get information to deliver to her. They know enough about the world, so they deliver it to her. They are in the sage role, even if there are greater quote unquote sages behind the picture that had these ultimate information. So don't get wrapped up in, oh gosh, who's the sage? Whoever's really addressing the hero is the one that's the sage.
Red, do you write? I don't know enough of, I mean, I haven't read all your books yet, and I'd love to. Do you write about the story behind? I'm always interested in the story behind what you just shared with you, because yours is very factual. Yours is, you know, what I'm seeing that you're offering is, this is the researcher. It's the doctor that's the researcher. That's not the MD, but the researcher.
Yeah, I am a researcher. I
Stories are
research.
so rich. The story behind are so rich, because that's where the high motivation of you writing comes from.
Yeah, I research what goes on in the human body at the cellular level. I look biochemically at cause and effect relationships. You treat a symptom, you'll always treat a symptom. You have to treat the cause to get rid of a problem. And that's the approach I take. And if I have something wrong with me and I research it, then I can explain that here's the process. You know, if you want stronger bones, you need this chemical, this one, and this one. If you don't have all 4 of them, everything doesn't work. And I relate my little vignettes of things that I've gone through, either with myself in various things, or in some cases, a client of mine. I am not a doctor. I have no background in that whatsoever, but I love chemistry and I love to research what happens. And so as I'm pulling things through, if there's a little story that I can tell that amplifies, clarifies, or is an analogy to that particular problem, the solution of that problem, then I use that in there. And most of the time, it's usually me. I use my wife periodically, but on the things that I've gone through, and there are not many, but there are things that people can relate to, as opposed to, you know, just here are the facts, ma'am. Well, the facts are okay, but here's a little story that goes with it that I think helps people as they go through a lot of this dry material sometimes.
I would say that the story part of it is imperative to the people, because without the narrative, without the story, there is no relatedness. So therefore, it's just information,
Yeah.
which is going to have a much smaller audience.
Yeah, and that's why I include my little stories in there, because I think they're that important.
Yes, I Completely agree. Zach, that's an analogy used by in psychology. If you've read Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell, the, the the hero's journey is so much a part of the human makeup, meaning we've been telling these same stories over and over again since humans have started telling stories. It's as if it is written in our genome. And I don't know that that's not true, because it's so much a part of our psycho makeup that it just shows up everywhere as far back as we can go. And now we can go, the further we research back into 10 to 15,000 years ago, the hero's journey was still being used even in picture sculptures and cave art. It was telling this story from this, from whatever the person is, went from this to this. So wherever it comes from, that's not this conversation. People are going to have their belief system around where it comes from. God put it in us, or it was part of evolution and survival of the fittest, and or it's ancient alien astronaut theory. Whatever your whatever bursts your or inspires you to continue to create that way, then yes, it's there though. The question is not why it's there. The question is, or the point is that it's there.
This is the very reason why there exists mythology and legends, because we need to explain things. Our brains need order. So we need to explain how things exist. And if you don't have a factual and natural way of explaining how something works, then you're going to make it up.
Correct.
And that is
yes. So to evolution's point, yes, that would be the reason that the hero's journey developed. If that's something you subscribe to, then yes, that exactly. Athena.
So Jeremy, I have a question for you. There's this other app, I guess it is, or I don't know what. Anyway, I think it's called Story Rocket, but you subscribe to it and then you can post your screenplay. It's mainly screenplay.
Oh yeah.
Then
it's a website.
Have producers and so forth, directors
take a look at it.
Yeah. So on that website, they're offering this course by a guy named Hart, who's a very quite famous screenwriter. And they show a little preview of it. And when he has these workshops, which they're trying to sell the people, he has this elaborate diagram with all of these lines and here and there, and the blah, blah, blah. And the second scene has to be this and the fifth scene has to be. When I see that, I just go, I'm sorry, I don't believe things fit into a diagram like that. But they say, oh, this is how this always works. It sells. It's what, it's what's going to work. I kind of have that kind of thing to a lesser degree, but to what you're telling me is it's like, make your story follow this model and it will be a success. And I'm not sure about that.
So first thing, I love that you heard that. That's the first thing I want to point out, because I never said those words, follow this formula and it'll lead to a success. However, that is what you heard. And because you have your own human story around, you have your own hero's journey that you're going through. I mean, that's what I want to point. We all have our own hero's journeys. And so your hero's journey is taking you to a path called, I can't plug something in and it be successful. You're right. You can't plug something in and be successful. There is far more to it, so I say, than just plugging it in and being successful. What I will say, though, is that if you look at a successful story, it will have all of those elements. It will always have all of those elements. Any of the great stories that we tell, including our own, is going to have all of those elements. And though when it comes to that course and those diagrams, this doesn't say anything. I use Story Rocket. I use it just as a subscription. I look at stuff that's on there because I'm curious. I haven't posted my stuff. Eventually I will. The key to that, to getting any producer to look at anything, is a great log line. And the log line, having the elements of the hero's journey in your log line, that's what makes a great log line. Regardless, that type of course where he's doing it, that is to make, so I say, that is to make it seem so convoluted and confusing that I've got to buy the thing in order to get help, because I have no idea how to put all those parts in. So I don't think it's that complicated, even a little that complicated.
Julie, I took screenwriting when I was in grad school, and there is a certain structure you know, a certain, like you hit this beat in this second scene and all that, but you do not have to take that class. And I've got a great screenwriting book that you could probably find a used copy for like $3 somewhere. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll put it in the Facebook group. And one thing that, that writing a screenplay, you know, when I was in college made me do was, you know, I had to adhere to that pattern, but it did sort of help me discipline my first book a little bit, in that, you know, there is that, you know, the crescendo, you know, and the denouement and all those big fancy words. But you don't have to spend a lot of money to take that course. I'll get y'all, I'll put the name of the screenwriting book, and it's, I mean, it's something like super easy, like how to write a screenplay, or something, but I'll put it in our Facebook group. And if you're curious, study it, you know. But I think Jeremy's right. The log line is what's going to catch a producer's eye. Most producers have already got a whole stable full of screenwriters that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
So, you know, unless you have a burning passion to write screenplays, I don't know.
Julie?
So I
Julie.
just say, I in general, based on my life experience, my heroine's journey, I'm a skeptic. You know, I'm very careful. Don't believe me, I'm not signing up for this course. I'm just saying I see it all over the place, not just there. I see it
you're
all
right.
over the place. People trying to say you have to, or you must, or you should follow this blankety blankety blank to develop your novel or your whatever. I have a friend in one of my critique group who continually talks about the arc of a story and what you have to do and so forth and so forth. I just am a skeptic on that. I think a good story is a good story.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go back and analyze it and say, okay, this is the hero, this is the sage, this is the journey, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but I don't think that's what I write for, or most people write for. And in my own book, which is nonfiction, when I will think about you saying, okay, say, I'm the sage, I'm telling the readers, this is how you should do the Camino, but half of my story is a memoir. So I'm the hero in the memoir part of my story.
Yes, but remember that, so I was only talking about that in terms of marketing. Yes, you are the hero in the actual story itself. But when you're marketing it, they're the hero, not you.
Anyway, I'm saying if I just use your kind of guide, my whole book is a tremendous fiasco because it doesn't follow that model.
But so
the hero and the sage and the blah blah, that all changes around.
Yes, so I want to read your book. Is it out yet?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I want you to somebody give me the name and where to get it, and I'm going to get it, and I will show you where the hero's journey works in it. But to your point, Julie, you're absolutely right. We don't tell stories for this reason. However, it is the way we tell stories. So you do not need to use this as a formula for creating your stories whatsoever. I don't in general, but I know it's going to be there. And I am going to look back at my story and go, okay, did it follow this? And can I make adjustments to the story to make it more intriguing using the hero's journey? However, that's not how I generally write. When I sit down at the paper, I don't have the formula in front of me. I do have the formula in front of me when I do marketing and when I do my business. And I do use it in my life, how I create my life to show up. Yes, definitely I do. But when I'm writing stories, I generally just write.
Jeremy, you said that it shows up in the human genome. Maybe I missed it. How does it show up in the human genome?
Oh yeah, sorry, I did answer you, Zach. I saw that. I answered it earlier. So that's an analogy. It's used by psychiatrists and psychologists who've studied how the hero's journey. If you read Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, that he uses it as an analogy. It's so much a part of the human existence. We tell this story over and over and over again. And we've told
it's in the collective consciousness.
Part of our genome. Yeah, collective
consciousness. Okay.
Correct.
So in other words, there are a bunch of stories. So you're saying that people should write these stories along these lines, and that's what you are. You have a hero's journey, or you think that it's, I mean, you know, I watch movies. I've never done a writing course. I've never done anything. I've never even done an acting class, actually. And I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild. So
Yeah.
I'm actually somehow landed to get into it. But you're right. There is
It's the accent.
No, it's not the accent. Actually, it's because I
I'm
listen to the
kidding.
director. But yeah, actually, yeah. But you're right. You're probably right. It's got to help. The voice does help. But what I was trying to say is that you're right. There are very clear different types of stories: hero's journey, overcoming the beast, etc., etc., etc. And
It's different names for the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I do, and they do get very intense about it. And what I was saying is, when I spoke to a friend of mine who has done all of these courses, like you've talked about, Julie, that you've done, Lydia. He spent 7 years doing all these things, and he's got nowhere with it. But at the time, I was writing The Crescent and the Cross. If you want to buy it, it's on Amazon. I'll sign an autograph for you. I said, well, what do I have to do to become a scriptwriter? And he said, where do I go and do it? He said, oh, don't bother doing that. Just go and be an extra in a movie. And then you'll just see what it's about. And so that's what I did. I went and became an extra in a movie. And, well, I did a bit more than that. But the thing was, I saw it as being paid to go to school. And I found that very much people use the same, there's a very clear pattern. And like now I can watch movies, and they'll give you, like, there'll be 3 or 4 times in a movie or places where you know what the dialogue is going to be before you've seen it. And you say the words, and they go, have you seen this movie before? And they're like, no, I haven't seen this movie before. It's just, it has to be these sort of words.
Yes.
I mean, arguably, one of our sci-fi writers here can talk about how the death of writing and the rise of AI is here tomorrow. You know, because I mean, it's there. It's that easy. That's why I'm just saying I think what you're saying is right, but it's very difficult to sometimes intellectualize it, because it's just is there. It's just, you just have to accept.
Yeah, so that comes back to your question about the human genome. You're right. You don't have to over-intellectualize any of this, especially to Julie's point. I just write stories. Yes, that's accurate. The hero's journey will be there regardless, so don't worry about it. Or use it formulaically if that's how your brain works. How you work is how you work. We're authors. We're artists.
I just like to say, to Julie's point, I joined Story Rocket when it first launched. And the most important thing they tell you is the log line. Now, I've been in and out of it for a while, but the log line is what they read and what will get people's attention. Now, before any of this ever happened, I was in Hollywood, I was in California, and I met up with a guy who was, he was writing Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that. But when I told him I was a writer, and I was at the time, I was working on a couple of different things, and he gave me, I think I told the story before to the group. But anyway, he said, you want to write movies? He gave me a stack of Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy's, a bunch of other scripts, and he said, this is how they do it. This is what, and it was just the format of it that you have to follow. And I read through those scripts, and I realized that so many of the TV shows recycle the same scripts. The things are different, characters are different, but the storylines are pretty much the same. And it was so funny that my grandson wanted to watch this show called Kicking It, and he's the first person who I knew who was on to streaming like nonstop TV shows. You know, he would get on one of these channels and just watch show after show after show. And I'm watching them with him, and I start telling him how this story is going to end and what's going to be next in the story, because they recycle the same script. The only thing they do is change the character name. And a lot of it, and a lot of Hollywood is formula. So, you know, it's what they do. It is an industry. It's like making a car. If you look at the way people make cars nowadays, a lot of cars you can't tell from one car to another because they all have the same body. They all have the same this. They all have the same that. So unless you see the emblem on the car, you don't know if it's a Honda, if it's an Acura, if it's a whatever, to whatever, because they all take that same body because it's mass production. And that's what we learned 100 years ago with Ford, mass production. And that's what a lot of industry is.
Athena?
For example, in romance, the formula is this: meet, lose, get back. That's
Yes.
the formula.
Yes.
However you do it doesn't matter. You meet, you lose, and you get back
And that's still the hero's journey. I am who I
Exactly.
am. I've met this person. I lose it. Now I have a problem. I go on whatever journey that I'm going on to have it back, which is the transformation. And usually the relationship has changed now that we're back. It's become even more magical, even more prolific. Transformation is the key. Zach, you're right. Redemption is what we often say, but that's not really the accurate word because redemptive only applies to certain stories. The real key to the hero's journey is transformation from this to this. That's what we're saying over and over again. We've gone from this to this. Speaking of log lines, and people keep mentioning Lucas and Star Wars. Star Wars has one of the best log lines ever. It's what got him to be able to make the movie. A science fiction fantasy about a native but ambitious farm boy from a backwater desert who discovers powers he never knew he had when he teams up with a feisty princess, a mercenary space pilot, and an old wizard warrior to lead a ragtag rebellion against the sinister forces of the evil galactic empire. And already it's one of the most perfect log lines. It's one of those perfect protagonist examples of the hero's journey. If you could just fill in the characters and the plots and everything, just fill that in with stuff else and sell your story to Hollywood.
Jeremy, that one about that log line you say is one of the lines that some of the Al Qaeda people that were interviewed by CIA will say, no, we're not the empire. You're the evil empire. We're the rebellion.
Yes, people use it as the analogy all the time because it's such a perfect example of this story we've told.
It's the same log line for Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Yes, ma'am.
It's exactly the same story, different characters.
Correct.
In every pirate movie you have ever seen.
And so we
Star
think
Wars is space pirates.
The reason our minds go to those stories is because those are, number one, well-known stories, and number two, they're simplified versions of the hero's journey. But even if we take very, very complex movies, we can still break them down into the simplification of the hero's journey.
When I was thinking about what Julie said, because I went through the whole thing, and when I was being coached, because I don't come from the writing field. I never took any of those courses. I was busy doing other things that had to do with the profession that I was focusing on at the time. My coach says, don't worry about a voice. You have a voice. Don't worry about an art. We have an art. We just have to strengthen it here. So for me, Julie, what I found is that what Jeremy's talking about is kind of sort of a check-off mark for me. I have to do what I have to do. I don't do well if somebody gives me a structure and I build with that structure. I have to build a structure, and then I
then use it as a check. Yeah.
That tells me how to do a structure, and then I check it off. And if it works, if it makes my story stronger, then I use it. If it doesn't, I got criticized. The first review that I got, they killed my little girl, because the reviewer was coming from that mode of, you check off this, you check off that. And I come from the consumer of literature, not that I spend time there trying to be interesting for somebody what I write. And it works for me. And what I said to myself, what I really got all upset about, it was the first review. I said, God, they killed my little girl there. She's sitting there and boom, she gets hit. And what I realized was that this person had no idea what I was writing about and who I was writing for. The meandering through life, everyday life, the making everyday life interesting. I consciously was repetitive because I knew part of my audience was going to be somebody my age or or a little younger or a little older, and you need to repeat things. They like to, the story, they like to be brought back to chapter 1 because they forgot chapter 1 by the time 7. And so I was consciously writing that way, and I was clobbered for it.
Yeah, well, don't clobbered for it is clobbered for it, so don't take that for what it's worth. And also, Delia, I love that you said I write as the consumer. I think that that's something that all of us would do well.
Amen. If you can't write something that you would want to read,
yes,
I mean, that's why, like, for example, Athena, I wish I could write romance, because I know that that's a very lucrative market if you can write well in that market. I can't do it. It's just not my thing. I'd rather write about dragons and magic cats. So that's my thing, So, and that doesn't discount romance, because, I've read, it's not my normal genre that I go to, but I've read, like every other woman, I've read some romance, and a good romance story, there's nothing better, it's like, hey, we all want that handsome cowboy or whatever,
To Tarina's point, because I think it's a good one, if you want to practice the hero's journey just as a matter of practice. Oh, I didn't.
That was
I'm
for
sorry.
Lydia. That was for Lydia. Telling her to leave Sam alone.
Yeah.
If you want to practice the hero's journey as just a matter of practicing it in your writing, use short stories, because it's an easy way to plug in the pieces of the formula. If you just want to go through the practice of doing it, write a bunch of short stories just using the hero's journey, and then it's just like any other muscle that you exercise; it just gets stronger.
Yeah, and Tarina, I haven't read her book, but we've chatted about it. And Tarina, your journey and the stories that you tell, they have those elements of the hero's journey, all throughout. And it's like Jeremy said, it's something that we do on a subconscious level. I mean, when I wrote the first draft of The Nightmare King, which was the first book I'd ever written in my, complete book in my whole life, I just wrote it. I didn't worry about, hero's journey or any of that stuff, but I'd seen enough Star Wars and read enough Narnia that this was, it was a magical story. So therefore it's like you subconsciously pick up on those rhythms.
You do.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to say, I appreciate this group. I appreciate just the wealth of knowledge and creativity that comes from each one of you. And with me being a first-time author, I think one of the things I appreciate the most is being able to take a different perspective and being open to taking on a different perspective. So this hero's journey method, if you will, is one that I feel that I can use to relaunch my book. And I definitely want to make sure I gravitate towards making sure I implement some of these principles. So thank you, Jeremy.
Of course.
I love
one of the places in my own, within Planet Bound, it's funny because the origins of Planet Bound have to do with all the sci-fi fantasy that I loved, right? And so I just smashed it all in one planet where everybody was trapped, because I was a 14-year-old boy that just wanted to do the stuff that I loved. So how do I take something that was a mishmash of all these genres and all of these different already established franchises, and how do I make this now a commercial game? Well, it was as easy as, because the formula stayed the same. The reason that people gravitated towards the game and wanted to play the game is because they all had their own individual hero's journeys in their characters. And so, and the non-player characters, meaning the cast of characters in the game, they all had their hero's journey. So all I had to do was change it up. So, instead of, the original game had Jedis and Klingons and all kinds of things, but of course I recreated and then expanded on individual cultures and species and stuff. But I just plug and played because the story, the hero's journey of Planetbound, the overarching story, which had nothing to do, that was mine. That was just what it was. So I just had to plug and play. All the other elements, you know, were not dependent on Klingons and Jedi. It was the story arc that was there. So then it was just plug and play.
Jeremy, I worked my way through college at a comic book movie memorabilia store.
I love it.
Yeah, you were probably like one of the your long lost cousins were, you know, our customers, and I was right there with you. I mean, I'm like, bring it on, sci-fi fandom. Let's do it.
Yeah. Comic books do it to a degree. Comic books are tough because, you know, when you're talking about graphic novels, you have so many cooks in the kitchen. I think that that's where graphic novels fail in a lot of ways, unless you have a one creator, writer. If you have a single creator, writer, artist, in fact, there's where you hit a real, you know, the guy who did The Walking Dead is just, his books are incredible because he was able to do it himself. When there's so, I mean, when you're talking about Marvel and DC's universe, you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So it's very difficult for them to have great story arcs meaning great heroes' journeys in their books themselves, because they change so much over time. They did it better in the movies, I think, to be honest, because they were able to lay out individual heroes' journeys.
Had one guy in charge of the whole strategy of the movie for Marvel. One guy was in charge of the whole thing.
Correct, and it was a great strategy.
Yeah.
Disney is the reason Disney is the empire that they are. They're masters of the hero's journey. Let's just be real. Everything from, even if you don't like the newer Star Wars stuff, it's still masterful hero's journeys, and people still watch it.
Well, Snow White.
Correct, from Snow White. I mean,
from
they're very first.
Forward, you know, it's like, okay.
I mean, it's what Athena talked about. Love, lost, found again. That's Snow White.
Lady
romantic novel hero's journey. And she has some great sages in the form of 7 dwarves. So.
So we're emotionally highly hooked to this. By the way, I learned how to speak English. I learned English with comic books. I mean,
because there's pictures along with the words, of course.
Pictures, and you know, they were the teenagers' romance. Archie, I think it was.
Yep, Archie comics.
Yeah, the emotional connection to whatever teenagers were feeling, and I mean,
yep,
that's how I learned. Really,
that's fantastic.
Other things, but that's what really hooked me. I couldn't read a book, so I read those books.
We got 5 minutes, Amy.
Yes. Okay. I know. So. No, that was great. That like went really smooth. I didn't know how this was going to go. So that was awesome. I love it. So everyone got something out of it, or, you know, it sparked something that they can relate to in their life. It was very relatable, which I love, because right now my hero journey right now is, you know, having my daughter at the moment and surviving. That's my hero's journey at the moment. But no, we do have 5 minutes. I do have announcements. So Monday night you're not going to want to miss Monday night. It's going to be Greg and Tess, who is the lady that did his audiobook, and they're going to be talking about everything audiobooks. So everyone needs to attend because audiobooks are super popular. Ask your questions, get all the information that you need. I'm sure that following Friday we will be talking about ways that we can help you get on audiobooks, how we can help you be the solution and get you on audiobooks. That is Monday night. August 22nd, which is when I was told, Athena, we will be doing your book launch, which is not this Saturday, next Saturday. Yes, the 22nd. We'll be doing Athena's book launch. I have it in the email, so that's the latest book launch we have for August, and then September at the moment is packed. So look forward to those. Don't forget about our affiliate program link and the group. James, I'll be posting this video along with Monday's video right after we get off of it. If you have any questions or anything, you guys know you can reach out to me or Sandy, and if Sandy doesn't respond, I'm your best bet to get to her. So other than that, that's all that I got. Do you guys have anything coming up that you want to mention? Make sure I share in the group. Anything exciting going on?
I'm speaking Wednesday at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a Zoom meeting on how to write and publish a book for free to the Houston West Chamber of Commerce. That's,
Perfect. Do you have a post for that?
sent that. I think I put that in. I copied that to you and Sandy earlier, so I think it's already been published once. But just
Okay.
want to speak to everyone.
Yeah, I will reshare it, publish it, and put it on Sandy's pages.
I will say that Greg's program on his audiobook launch inspired me to investigate it. I, of course, sort of said, I'm just not going to do this. But I started investigating, and the end result is, with Zach's help, I picked a narrator, and she's working on the narration right now. So my audiobook should be finished by the end of this month. And I've asked Amy to set a book launch date an audiobook launch date in September.
Congratulations.
So it's interesting to me because when you go to the ACX sites, they tell you these kinds of books are not suitable for audiobooks. And of course, one of them is nonfiction travel book, but I'm doing it. So I'm doing it for the experience as much as anything.
I'm so excited for you, Julie. Yes, September is going to be a big month. So I'm excited to see how everything goes. I'm excited about Monday. Greg, Jeremy, you were great answering questions and everything today. I know I kind of sprung that on you. I didn't know it was
okay. That's why I came. That's why I made sure to be here. I arranged work-wise, so I got to jump back there, though. Take care. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Jeremy. Thanks.
All right. So I'll see you guys Monday night. Everyone have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, you guys. Have a great weekend.